For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
And you're listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SAMatters Radio. The SAMatters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Safe to dance. Oh, it's safe to dance. Yes, safe to dance.
Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SAMatters mission is simple: to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. If you've experienced a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, please contact me through the SAMatters.com website and click on the Contact Us link on the top of the home page. Have you ever thought about this? Your lessons learned from a close call could actually save someone else's life? Think about that for a moment. And if you'd like to share your experience, contact me. I'm coming to you today from Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm in town to present 4 programs for Fire Rescue International. Thank you to the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the Program Planning Committee for the opportunity to participate in the conference. This week we're going to be talking about situational awareness and why it's so important, the leading barriers to situational awareness, and training for failure, why we must change the way we train first responders. This was a very productive week. I did a book signing for Fire Engineering Books and Videos. Thank you, Cindy Hughes and Marla Patterson, for hosting that. We sold out the entire inventory of books in about 20 minutes. I was a few minutes late arriving for the book signing because I had to finish up a program that I was teaching in another part of the convention center. And by the time I got there, there was a line waiting for me to get their books signed. That was really cool. I also did a video interview for Fire Chiefs Magazine. Thank you to John Buckman for the opportunity, and I'm sure you'll be able to see that soon on firechief.com website, so be watching for that if you're interested in watching that video interview. And I also got to visit the Midwest Fire booth. Man, if you haven't checked out their all poly design fire trucks, you really need to. They're amazing. The people who came by the booth were just in awe at the quality in those trucks. Check them out at MidwestFire.com. Am I saying they build quality fire apparatus because they're the sponsor of this radio show? No. If they didn't build quality fire apparatus, they wouldn't be the sponsor of this radio show. Seriously, check them out. While here in Atlanta, I got connected with Wadesville, Indiana Fire Chief Adam Farrar. Adam's department hosted a full-day situational awareness class earlier this month. Inspired by the message, Adam chose the topic of situational awareness for one of his college papers and asked to interview me. I wasn't sure what kind of questions he was going to ask me, but I decided I would record the interview in case it turned out okay, and then I could share it with our listeners. Other than some background noise, and I apologize for that because we're in the lobby at the Atlanta Convention Center, the interview I thought was excellent. I hope you'll be able to come away with a few good tips on the topic of situational awareness as I share the top 10 barriers to situational awareness. And Adam, I hope it was able to help you with your college paper as well. Okay, let's jump right into my response to Adam's first question. How did I get locked on to the topic of situational awareness to begin with?
You know, when I entered into the PhD program in 2004,
I had to pick a topic to do original research, which means you have to try to discover something that no one's ever discovered. And I didn't know how to do that, but they taught me how to do it. And it's actually a requirement to earn a PhD that has to be an original discovery. Like the paper you're writing is not going to be an original discovery. You're not doing research per se to try to discover something. And the kind of papers that you're doing are always, have all throughout my whole life been the kind of papers that I was doing at the bachelor's and master's level, was just taking the research of other people, kind of synthesizing it, putting it together, and and turning it in. But that wasn't the case here. It had to be original research. So the topic that I wanted to do my research on was firefighter safety, because I had for my whole life been a student of firefighter safety, of how do we keep firefighters safe, and how do we get it right in the moment that we have to make these really important decisions. And as I had been evaluating these casualty reports, I found myself asking a question many times that I couldn't answer. And it wasn't because it was a hard question, it was a simple question, but I just couldn't figure out the answer. And it was simply, how could they not see it coming? There were so many signs and clues and indicators that the incident that they were operating on was going to end in a disaster. But for some reason, they couldn't see it. It was like they were blind. And it wasn't like one person was blind or one company of firefighters was blind. Sometimes it seemed like everybody operating at the incident scene was blind. The whole incident was blind to what was degrading and eroding. And I'd get so angry and so frustrated because I couldn't figure out how could they miss that? Look at all these clues. Look at all these indicators. Look at this. This is, it'd be kind of like you're on the train and you're looking 3 miles ahead and you see the tracks are missing and the train is going to wreck. But they weren't able to see that. So I started to do my research on the neuroscience of decision making. How do we make decisions when we're operating in high stress, high consequence, time compressed, rapidly changing conditions? And there I got introduced to situational awareness. It's kind of funny, Adam, for my whole career I knew situational awareness was important. If you'd asked me, I'd have said it's important, but I really didn't even know what it was. But I just knew it was important to have it. Didn't know how to get it, but I knew that it's something I was supposed to have. And I got introduced to some research that was done not with the fire service but with other industries on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making. And there, putting those two things together laid the answer to my question of how can we not see bad things coming. And what I uncovered that allowed me to earn the PhD was these barriers to situational awareness, these things that keep us from being able to develop or maintain situational awareness, or if we lose it, that keep us from being able to get it back once we've lost it. And I just started amassing a list of these barriers, and when I first started uncovering the barriers, I thought, gosh, there's got to be at least 15 or 20 of them. Well, I ended up being 116 of them, and which kind of was unnerving for me, because I thought, well, if 116 ways it can go wrong, how do we ever get it right? So I started taking this list of 116 and researching each of them. And I still continue to this day to research these barriers, trying to crack the code about how they happen, why they happen, how to prevent them from happening, and how to recover when they do happen. And I can only go at the speed at which science does the expensive research and share those findings with the fire service. And there's a lot of research being done and a lot of findings being published, not for our benefit, but for the benefit of other industries. And I cherry pick the findings of those research studies and then bring them over and put them into the fire service application. And it was through that whole process that I come to the realization that situational awareness is the foundation for good decision making, which sets up everything that we do, good and bad. And these barriers cause the disconnect very early on in that process. And that's how I ended up going there. And when I started, I didn't know that's where I was going to end. People always say, have a plan with what you're going to do. And I thought I had a plan, but I ended up going in a whole different direction, because as I was uncovering these things, it was almost like I was being called in a direction to do the research in a different angle than what I had started with. And it's just been amazing, the discoveries and then the applications of those discoveries for first responders. You've been in the classes, you've seen it come to life with those experiments and not experiments, but demonstrations and examples, and how powerful they are, and the classes are always populated with really smart firefighters and company officers and chief officers, and I think some of them literally walk away numb for what they thought they knew, but now realize they didn't even know what they thought they knew. And I like that feeling of giving them almost like the light bulb comes over the head, eye-opening, epiphany. I don't know if I want to go as far as say of life-changing, although that's the term that some of them have used, experience of seeing our own potential shortcomings as responders, especially when we're operating under stress. So that's kind of how it was born.
Okay. So you talked about barriers, and I know in your PhD and in being in your classes, you've created the definition of situational awareness.
Yes.
What's that definition?
Yeah, situational awareness. Well, first of all, when I went to school, there was like 7 different definitions that different researchers had created and applied and put towards situational awareness, and they were all okay, but I don't know, it just didn't feel like they were the perfect fit for our world. So, once I graduated and got the degree, then you can create things and, say, here, this is your definition, so this is my definition. Situational awareness is an individual's ability to perceive and understand what is happening in the environment around them. So there's 2 parts to that, perception and understanding. And it's important to separate those 2 parts, because simply because you see something doesn't mean you understand what you see, or because you hear something doesn't mean you understand what you hear. And then there can be disconnects between what you see and what you hear. So we should not assume that simply because we perceive it that we understand it. Those are 2 different processes. So an individual's ability to perceive and understand what is happening in the environment around them. Then I added, in the context of how time is passing, because in our environment, it's a dynamically changing environment, so what you know to be happening at minute 5 is not necessarily what's going to be happening at minute 7 of the incident, because of the speed at which conditions change. And then in turn, being able to make accurate predictions about future events, hopefully in time to avoid bad outcomes. And those predictions just simply mean, in the mind, thinking about the outcome of our actions before we engage in our actions. In other words, asking the question, can me and my crew change this outcome here and now? I've got a crew of 4, 1 truck with a certain amount of water. Can we change this outcome? What are we going to do? And then what's going to be the result of what we do, both good or bad? And trying not to get all hung up in the optimism of, we're going to do this and the fire's going to go out, because that's what we always do in training and the fire always goes out. It's a little different dynamic there in the real world. And just using, your mind's eye to kind of look into the future and anticipate those future outcomes. Hopefully in time, so that if it's not going in the direction you thought, you can zig instead of continuing to zag and get yourself into a bad outcome. So let me just kind of like put it all together as one singular stated definition. Situational awareness is an individual's ability to perceive and understand what is happening in the environment around them in the context of how time is passing, and then in turn be able to make accurate predictions about future events, hopefully in time to avoid a bad outcome.
So you said you came across 7 different definitions in your research.
Yeah.
In your opinion, why did the fire service never catch on to it? It's always been there.
Yeah.
But it never was something that was more than just a couple words in a textbook.
The best explanation I can give to that, Adam, is that it's a complex topic.
Sure.
It took me 7 years and a PhD in neuroscience to get to the point where I feel like I know enough that I can stand in front of an audience and teach it. And there are people who've only done some cursory work on the side and they're trying to teach it, or people who've read a book and they're trying to teach it. And I've attended some of those classes, and quite frankly, some of the things they're teaching scare me. As the subject matter expert, I say, I can't believe you just said that. Where's the proof that what you're just saying is, I don't know the science behind that. You're making this up on the fly, and that kind of scares me. And I, short of having an instructor not teach it, probably worse is the instructor who teaches it and gets it wrong. And I'd rather have an instructor say, look, I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to teach it. I'd respect them more than them trying to make up and act like they know more than what they know about the topic. And it is a very complex topic. So I just think to this point, there had not been anybody in the fire service who was a practitioner who took 7 years of their life to dive deep into the neuroscience and make the connection between the neuroscience of stress and decision making in SA coupled with a field knowledge, a practitioner's knowledge, and be able to put it together and connect the dots and see the aha and present it in a way that first responders can say, I get it. I really get it. I really understand it. I have attended programs where there have been academic researchers presenting situational awareness, and there have been first responders in the audience, and when it's done, I ask the first responder, so what do you think? What that researcher had to say made perfect sense to me, and the responders will say, it was over my head. I wasn't tracking at all, because they're talking in very high levels, very complex, very sophisticated language that the first responders turn off to. They're like, you know what, I don't need to know all the names of the neurotransmitters and brain parts and so on. Just tell me what I need to know when I'm on the street. Well, these researchers who've never been on the street, these academic researchers who've not been on the street, can't relate to the stress of pulling a hose line down a hallway, or can't relate to the stress of having a child dead in your arms when you're on a highway incident, but traffic's still flying by you both directions. So I think that what I've been able to do that has not previous to me been done is make that connection between science and application. And what I'm hoping is that with all my efforts, that I'm going to build a cadre like you of really smart and passionate people about this topic who then can become teachers of accurate lessons of situational awareness. And, I guess every movement begins with the first person making a move. And, I'd like to think I've made the move, and I'd like to think that maybe out there I'm building a cadre of loyal subjects to the topic, not to me, but to the topic of situational awareness, like yourself, who've become very passionate about the lessons and the takeaways. I mean, you're writing a research paper on it, and as everyone else in your cohort is writing of other topics, even your instructor said, well, you're the first one who's ever written about situational awareness, and we had that conversation, offline, and I said, well, the reason for that, Adam, is most of the people who would be in these cohorts who are taking these classes don't know very much about situational awareness, so they're not thinking about writing a paper about it, but you've kind of taken a deep dive. You've got the books, you've got the videos, you've had the classes, and the more people like you that I can inspire, the more I think this topic will take legs and be carried on by many talented practitioners, either at the chief level or the instructor level. But it had to start somewhere. And I don't want to go as far as to say I started a movement. But in the end, when maybe on my eulogy, somebody will stand up and say, over the course of 20 years, he started a movement that has taken legs, and now no first responder class would be complete without at least a day dedicated to the topic of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. We're not there. We're nowhere near there. But, when the day is done and my life is done, that's what I would wish the accomplishment to be.
So I know sitting in your class and watching some of your videos and watching your presentations and stuff, situational awareness as it comes to the probationary firefighter walking in the door. You said a day's worth. Could you say that for the starting out, that could be a starting point, or even less in this topic, and more about the tactics? And then as you advance in the fire service and you get the company officer, you get to a chief officer, that's whenever you need to dive deep into the backstory of it to understand the barriers, understand what you're telling somebody else to do, and make sure they understand what they're seeing in front of them.
Yeah, I would like to think that because situational awareness is the foundation for decision making, that any first responder, including the new person coming in, might find themselves in a situation where they have to either make a decision or influence a decision maker, even influence their company officer, because their company officer might miss something or might be going down a bad track. And therefore I think there is at least a basis of understanding for situational awareness for even the newest responders. And I have a very short program that I created because I started getting invited, and this is so passionate for me, to a few academies with brand new firefighters. And they'll say, Rich, we're going to teach them hoses and ladders and air packs and fire dynamics. Come in and give them 2 hours of situational awareness. And just the overview of what they need to know, brand new firefighter walking in. And I love that because, what I teach, Adam, all be told, is not sexy. It's important, but it isn't sexy. Pulling a hose line down a hallway and slaying a dragon or putting a fire out, that's fun, that's sexy. Making holes in roofs, that's fun. Cutting up cars, that's fun. But if we miss the component of developing situational awareness, and we just focus on the hands-on, we're missing a really important part of what's going to potentially get us hurt and killed. Because as a contributing factor to casualties, situational awareness is a pretty big contributing factor. And a lot of instructors who don't know a lot about situational awareness focus on the hands-on skill development, and there's nothing wrong with that, making good practitioners of firefighters, but not necessarily good thinkers. And I think that the foundation of a kind of an introductory program to SA then gets those new firefighters from day one thinking about situational awareness as something that's important. My son, who is finishing up as a Marine, got hired by the Madison, Wisconsin Fire Department, and he's in his 4th week of his recruit training. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm going to see how this is going to go, because I've been to Madison and I've done multiple programs for the Madison Fire Department. So this is my first time to have like the insider, the secret squirrel who looks to see, how are they doing anything based on the things that I've taught. So every time I have a conversation with my son, he says, Dad, he said, you'd be so proud. You'd be so proud. He says, every class that we're doing, every part of our instruction has an element of situational awareness lesson built in. Whether it's classroom, whether it's hands-on, he said it is like your part of you is here talking to us through our instructors every step of the way. And I said, Cameron, that's what I so wish all departments who would host a program would do, is take the lessons, breathe some life into them, and keep them going. So like when you're out teaching the sexy stuff, which is like the meat and potatoes on the plate, that you're sprinkling a little seasoning of situational awareness onto it while you're doing it. In the moment of teaching fire attack or repelling or ventilation or auto extrication, there's always the opportunity, if you know how to do it, to sprinkle in a situational awareness lesson. It doesn't take a lot of time, but what it does is get the person to think, not only am I cutting up a car, but I need to be situationally aware about how I'm doing it and the environment around me and future potential things that could be happening. And that's what I hope will come of this. And I think that to accomplish that, SA would need to become at least a module in basic firefighter training. How long? I'd say 1 to 2 hours if somebody knows how to teach it right. But then when you get to the company officer level, it needs to be longer, because then now you're really getting a deep dive into decision making. At the basic firefighter level, you need to understand how a decision is made and the basis of SA. But once you get to the company officer and you sit in the right front seat and you are the decision maker, you better know really well about how to make a high-risk, high-consequence decision and these barriers and the things that can impact your ability to make a good decision, because you're only going to get it one chance to get it right. And a lot of people who get it right are getting it right by luck, not by skill, but by luck, and that which gives them the false belief of how good they think they are. And that's where I was. I used to think, oh man, look how good I am. I don't get anybody hurt, or I don't get anybody killed. And then when I did this deep dive, I went, oh my God, I don't even know what I need to know. So what I would want these company officers to do is I'd want to change their competence level from unconscious incompetence, where they don't even know what they need to know, to becoming unconsciously competent, knowing what they need to know so well they don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just automatic. They're doing it without even, using the checklist. They're just bam-bity, bam-bity, bam, got it. So that it just becomes so routine for them that it's not even something they have to strain about thinking about. And that takes more time. That's, at least for a company officer, a full day. For command level officers, battalions and people who are going to be commanding larger incidents, that's probably a 2-day process to dig deep into these barriers. Because even at the highest level, what I would be doing is I would be taking those command people and teaching them what could be happening to the people who are working underneath of them that could impact their ability to command because of the erosion of SA, down the line, not just at the highest level, but, down the line. Everybody's got to have some level of SA. The commander can have wonderful SA, but if somebody below them has a flaw and makes a bad decision, it's going to impact the whole incident for that commander. So for the new firefighter, 1 to 2 hour, but I think it should be part of, as essential as here's how you wear your turnout gear and here's how you develop situational awareness. And to me, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah. As you travel around the country in your classes and you talk about the basic module or the basic recruit classes or firefighter 1-2 classes, whatever the case may be, have you had the opportunity to install your message into those programs? I know you said you did a couple of recruit academies, but like on the broad spectrum of a state program, have you had the opportunity to stick your message in their requirements?
No. No. Until situational awareness is better represented in the NFPA standards, and I kind of understand why it's not, because it is kind of it's kind of an esoteric topic that it's hard to wrap your mind around it. It's kind of hard for me to look at the person sitting over next to us and saying, I wonder if that person has situational awareness right now or not. You can look at a firefighter who's pulling a hose line and know whether they're good at it or not by just observing. But you can't always know whether somebody has good SA just by observing, because you can't get inside their head. You'd almost like have to interview them to find out if they do. And the NFPA standards don't have much in them about situational awareness or even high-risk decision-making. And until that changes, it won't make the curriculum, and it won't make the standards, and it won't be required in these programs, because these programs are designed to get firefighters prepared and qualified and certified as NFPA 1001 firefighters or 1021 fire officers. And when it makes the standard and becomes required training, then I think you'll see these curriculums say, well, we have to do it, and which, I would fall over myself with joy, if it would just, be, one small chapter of a firefighter development book. You see the books today, get out of the show floor and walk around to the vendors and look at the books. I mean, these books are 3, 4, 5 inches thick, good for physical fitness for a firefighter. Give them one in each arm, let them carry them around. But, go through those books and look at the number of times that situational awareness is discussed in a meaningful way. And here's what I mean is, you can find in a book you could find I saw one book where it had a picture of them doing water rescue. So the firefighter is out, like tethered on a rope, out in a fast-moving stream. That's the photograph. And the caption says, it's important when operating in a swift water incident for firefighters to maintain situational awareness. Right?
Yeah.
and I looked at that and I went, no duh, but how? You know,
It doesn't go
so
into it.
yeah, I mean, it's nice that it's mentioned, but it really doesn't teach anything about how to do it. I read that caption, I say, okay, how? How? You know, teach me how. Don't just, you know, it's like it's telling you, Adam, if you're going to go out on the highway, you got to be a good driver. Now go drive. You know, tell that to your 15-year-old. Now go drive. No. You got to stop. Teach them how to drive. Don't just state the obvious of, you know, you need to be a good driver so you don't get in an accident. And a lot of the mentions in these books, and I don't fault the instructors. Most instructors don't know enough about it to be able to write coherently about it. You know, and I give a lot of credit to Penwell for giving me the opportunity to write the book Situational Awareness for Emergency Response. You know, 400 pages of dedicated to nothing but situational awareness. Go figure. Most of the firefighter training books sparsely make a mention of it. Here's one book, 400 plus pages of nothing but situational awareness, the barriers, and how to make high-risk, high-consequence decisions in time-compressed environments. Yeah, there's that. I've written 5 books. That's just one of 5 books on it. There's a lot to this topic. And I think that a lot of folks just don't get enough exposure to it to understand how big a deal it is. Superficially, they know. But once they do a deeper dive, like you've done a deeper dive, you know, it's the deeper dive for you on the receiving end, I would guess is that you come away with 2 feelings. 1, I'm inspired to want to learn more, and 2, I'm now scared to death.
Yeah.
Because you see the potential of your own human error, and that can be very sobering.
Yeah, that's no lie.
No lie.
No lie. So you keep referring to the barriers, and I know you've got 116 of them, and you have a chart, and you've got a new poster and everything. It's got all of them on there.
Yeah.
If you had to take 10 off that 116, what are the top 10 you would choose to make everybody aware of?
Okay. That's so we didn't rehearse those questions, so I don't have the list of 10 on a notepad that I'm going to read, the 10 off. So I'm just kind of riffing here to come up with 10. So I would say, and some of these are going to be probably pretty obvious to people, but as you take the deeper dive, there's a deeper explanation as to why and how these become barriers and how to deal with them. But I would say improper size up, because that flaws the first part of situational awareness development, which is perception. If you don't capture the information, you can't possibly understand it and predict the future. And how read the casualty reports. How many firefighters, when NIOSH writes the report, will say in their recommendations, more thorough size-ups need to be conducted, which seems obvious, but yet they still aren't being done. So I'd say size-up is the beginning of gathering the information that forms the understanding. So complacency, and complacency and overconfidence. I'd call it. They're two different barriers. So I'd make them, 2 of them on the list: complacency and overconfidence. But when you have bad outcomes, and you get away with it builds your confidence, and you can get overconfident. And I want confident firefighters, but overconfidence, because you've done things that have only been lucky, not good, can lead to this overconfidence that then allows you to think that things aren't going to hurt you because you've got it figured out. You're bulletproof, you're untouchable. Fire won't burn you, glass won't cut you, and then that leads to complacency. And so we got size up, complacency, overconfidence, task fixation. Just getting so all in on doing hands-on work that you're not really paying attention to the bigger environment around you. You know, somebody's working on an auto extrication, they're all hands-on with a tool, cutting the door off, not realizing the cars are zinging by them. You know, when they're done cutting the door, they step backwards, and all of a sudden they're in the pathway of a car. So, task fixation. Mission myopia. Mission myopia is being so dedicated to your mission that you don't let the facts of what's going on get in the way. So, you know, I show this video of these firefighters that are on a roof, and they're cutting a hole in a roof that is clearly already ventilated, almost as if to say, well, I'm not going to let that already venting roof get in the way of me cutting the hole that I want to cut, because I'm a truck company person, and truck company people do ventilation work, and that's my mission, and by golly, I'm going to do that mission come hell or high water, and it doesn't matter that it's already vented. I'm going to, cut the hole. So that mission myopia, I think, is a significant barrier. Multitasking, a huge barrier to situational awareness, simply because people are under the delusion that they can multitask and can take multi-sensory inputs and make sense out of all of those various inputs at the same time. And as you know, we do demonstrations where we melt that down right quick and debunk that myth. Pre-arrival lens is another significant barrier. And Adam, if I wasn't on the fly, I don't know that if I had more time to look at all 116 and piece them and line them up, I don't know. I can't promise you that a week from now, if I had the chance to do that my top 10 list then would be exactly this top 10 list. But what I'm doing for you here on the fly is I'm thinking about these firefighter casualty events and the things that have popped out to me as being consistent barriers that are present. Sure. So the pre-arrival lens is getting so committed to a plan of action before you arrive based on information that's given to you from dispatch that paints an image in your mind of what you're responding to, that you make a plan before you put eyeball one on a fire, and you go all in on this plan without even doing an assessment of making sure that the fire fits the image in your mind of what you're going to be responding to or arriving to. Staffing. Staffing is a very significant, in fact, concerns about staffing, and that would be understaffing, quality of staffing, how good my people are, response time delays of the staffing, getting the right number of people there in the right amount of time. When I did my research, and I used subject matter experts to help me rank these barriers. In other words, they had all 116, and I had them say, I took them through a process, a very regimented, scientific process of making their top 10 list. They had these 116, and through this series of exercises I did with them, I got them down to their top 10, and then from their top 10 to the top 5, and then from the top 5 to the top 3. And concerns for staffing, after all the subject matter experts were done, ended up being ranked the number one most significant situational awareness barrier. And now these were incident commanders, experienced incident commanders. They had to have 15 years of command level experience. And the challenge with staffing is that when you're commanding an incident, you're paying attention to the fire, you're paying attention to the smoke, the building construction, everything. But in your mind is concerns for your staffing. Where's my staff? What are they doing? Are they accomplishing what they're supposed to? Are they doing it safely? What's their what are the conditions they're operating in? Is their radio working? If they needed help, do I have enough help here for them? If they call a Mayday, do I look at my RIT team? Do I have is my RIT team the A team, or are they from the Island of Misfits? What do I got here? All these concerns for staffing elevate staffing to be clearly the number one thing on the mind of incident commanders is people, how many, how good, and their safety, which is wonderful. It's exactly what I would want to be on their mind. But they say that can draw their attention away from paying attention to other things. How many are we up to? 8. All right, so I've got to come up with 2 more. Communications. And specifically radio communications. Although there can be issues with face-to-face communications, it's far more likely to be the issue with communications. One of the big barriers. There are a whole list of communication-related barriers. So of the 116, there might be 8 or 10 of them that are communication-themed barriers. But one of the big ones in communications is too much communication, too much radio traffic.
Your term radioactive?
Radioactive, right. Yeah, giving somebody a radio and they don't know how to shut up. People are of the belief that the more information they share, the better people will understand. Well, you can get to the point where you just overshare. And then when you have a whole group of people that all have radios, all with something that they think is important and needs to be shared, and all of them sharing on air their important information or perceived important information, it can easily lead to a barrier where once you get too much radio traffic, and I'll even ask in the class, I say, what do you do? And people say, I shut down, I stop listening, I tune it out, I turn it down. So they start to even just say in their own words, what happens. The problem is when you start tuning it out, you don't just tune out the unimportant things and remember the important things. You tune it all out. And this tuning out doesn't happen at the ears, it happens in the brain. You see, all the sounds are getting into the ears. Unless you're wearing earmuffs or earplugs, every sound of everything comes into the ears. It's in the brain where that information is being processed into understanding that we do the tuning out. I'd recently written an article on my blog about selective listening. So if somebody wanted to learn more about that, they could just go and see how do we do what happens when we're selectively listening. And so selective listening as a communication barrier. So if you went communications dash the subtitle selective listening would be a pretty powerful situational awareness barrier. One of the things in casualty reports is that you see the radio log of a casualty report. You say, well, the incident commander should have known what was going on. Look, this was in the radio log, and this was in the radio log, and this was in the radio log. And the person who's reading that report after the fact somehow assumes that because you were in charge and you had a radio clipped on your lapel, you literally did hear all that radio traffic and understood it. And being a commander, that is not always the case.
No.
Simply because it's said, even if you acknowledge it, it doesn't really mean, the word is registered. It doesn't necessarily mean it registered, right?
Yep.
You could even acknowledge it, but it doesn't mean that you really understood it. You were just giving the courtesy acknowledgement. Message received. And later on you'd be like, well, what was that? And you might not even remember that you even acknowledged it. I've had people say, well, I didn't hear it. Yeah, you did. You acknowledged it. No, I didn't. Here's the tape. Holy cow. I did say 10-4. Well, I didn't even remember that I did. So we're up to 9. We need to come up with one more. So let me think. Well, I would say that stress is is one of the barriers that make the top 10, and that's probably universal across all work that we do. But there are certain kind of things that we do that are more stressful than others, and there are certain people that are prone to be more stressed than others, and there are people who are prone to have stronger reactions to stress than others. There are some people that, under crisis, they're just calm, cool, collected, just unaffected. They have a very good stress management mechanism. There's some that just seem to go ape crazy on just the most minor of things, and you would hope that as people get more experience over time, that they'd get a calming effect of learning how to manage through stress. But a lot of people don't do that. I mean, I've known responders that, it's like, dude, you've been on for 15 years. It's a house fire. You don't need to be that excited. It's not your house on fire. The trash hauler doesn't come around the corner of a street and say, oh my God, there's a trash can, oh my God. They're just doing their job. And you'd think that some people would get to the point where they would develop a strong mechanism for managing the potential ill effects of stress on SA and decision making, but they don't. So I would say that stress and the impact of the neurochemicals that are released under stress that change brain behavior. The stress brain and the non-stress brain simply do not function the same. That is a fact. And some people learn well how to manage through the impact of this cocktail of chemicals that are trying to change brain behavior, not trying, but do change their brain behavior. And some just seem to have a meltdown and just go crazy. And some will say, well, they have no common sense. They do the stupidest things. What were they thinking? They're so excitable. So the stress would be clearly in the top 10.
Thank you.
So let's summarize them. You call back the 10 that I came up with.
Okay. So size up.
Yep.
Was being number 1 that you listed. Complacency and overconfidence is 2 and 3.
Okay.
Tax fixation and mission myopia.
Okay.
Multitasking, the pre-arrival lens, communications related to radio, and then stress. And then from your research in the past, the number 1 that your experts in the field came up with was staffing overall was a barrier. Number 1 barrier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good list.
So for the issue of time, since both of us have other places that we have to go, I'm going to ask one more question.
All right.
If you had to start all over, is there anything you would change?
Start all over in my career in the fire service?
In your research, in what we're talking about today. If you get to start all over in your PhD program, situational awareness, the way you went about it in your career now, is there anything you would change?
I think what the answer is that people want is that we always reflect back and see the regrets. No, I am so fortunate to have had the path laid in front of me that I went down. I wasn't taking a sickle and chopping through and making a new path with purposeful intent. I was being pulled down a path. Sometimes with my heels dug in, going places I didn't want to go, studying stuff I didn't want to study. I mean, who wants to study neuroscience? It gets kind of overwhelming and just kind of makes your head swim and swirl and stuff. And sometimes I dug my heels in and said, I don't want to study this phenomena or that phenomena. But I am so thankful that I went down the path that I did, and and I ended up leaving my career in the fire service, although I finished 30 years, but I left being the fire chief because the opportunities to teach these classes, the first responders, I truly believe, Adam, had become my calling. It's like there is no place in life that I'm supposed to be and nothing else I'm supposed to be doing than exactly where I'm at and exactly what I'm doing. I don't have any regrets. I don't think, well, I should be a fire chief somewhere, or I should be this, or I should be that. I should be in front of students sharing the situational awareness message and teaching them how to make high-risk, high-consequence decisions. And I have zero doubt that is absolutely the calling of what I'm supposed to be doing. So along the way, I had lots of regrets, especially as my debt for student loans were building up. But in the end, once it was done, and then I got to start sharing the message and see the inspiration of the students and the feedback and the kind messages that folks have provided to me about how they look at things so differently now. No regrets. Yeah, one regret, that I didn't do it 20 years earlier, because my fear is I'm going to run out of life before I reach enough people to make the big difference. I'm not that old, but I got a lot of work to do and a lot of people to reach. And my, I guess the big regret would be, man, I wish I would have went and got this PhD at 28 years old instead of 48 years old, because that would have given me 20 more years and a lot more stamina to get to more places and reach more audiences. And and if I'd have done that, now we'd have been sitting here and I would have been 20, 30, 48, 25 years into delivering the message instead of only 10 years into delivering the message. So yeah, that would be my regret, that I didn't somehow have this inspiration earlier in my life.
Well, thanks for your time. I think you're on the right path, and I think you got a good message, so don't stop now.
Yeah, Thank you. Before I close out today's episode, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and organizations that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stops. Your efforts to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making to your members and others in your region are greatly appreciated. The West Point Military Academy in West Point, New York, the Aberdeen Proving Ground Military Facility in Aberdeen, Maryland, the Gary, Indiana Fire Department, the Wadesville Fire Department, the Crawfordsville Fire Department, and of course here in Atlanta, Fire&rsquo International. If you're interested in attending an upcoming program, you can catch up with me on September 10th. I'll be at the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Graduate Symposium, delivering a 20-minute TEDx-style presentation on creating the thinking firefighter. September 12th, I'll be in Plainfield, Michigan. September 14th, Bloomfield Township, Michigan. September 23rd, I'll be the closing keynote at Fire&rsquo Canada. That's the conference for the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs in Victoria, British Columbia. September 26th in Delran, New Jersey. And September 28th, a full-day presentation at the Ontario Fire College and Gravenhurst, Ontario. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop, head over to SAMatters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Event Schedule. Here's hoping there'll be a tour stop near you and we'll get a chance to meet up. If you're interested in having your department or your association host a tour stop, contact me through the website and we'll get something set up for you. If you're not a member yet of the SAMatters community of learners, please consider joining. There are more than 5,000 members connected on the SAMatters website, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train our members to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. Membership is free, and when you sign up, I'll send you a special report that I've created for the new members, 25 best practices for improving first responder safety. If you're not a member yet, head over to the SAMatters website, click on the red box on the right side of the homepage, that says free membership. As a reminder, every episode of the SAMatters show has a corresponding show notes page on the SAMatters website. All the most recent episodes scroll on the homepage, but for older episodes, you can search and find those by putting SAMatters.com/ and the episode number, which I always mention at the start of the show. So, for example, if you wanted to access, say, episode 60, you'd open up your internet browser, enter www.samatters.com/60, and that'll take you to the page that contains the link to that episode. The show notes page contains additional information and resources about the episode, and depending on who my guest is, there may also be incident scene pictures, video, and audio, and the contact information for the guest. On the show notes page, you can also ask me questions and leave feedback about the episode. If you want to get connected with me on social media, you can follow @RichGasaway or @SAMatters on Twitter, @RichGasaway or @SAMatters on Twitter. The SAMatters Twitter community is more than 16,000 followers strong, and I thank you for that and sharing the support for my mission on Twitter. You can get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SAMatters page on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. You can find me by searching Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. Thanks to everyone who's connected with me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I certainly appreciate your support of my mission there too. If you like the show, please consider heading over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and subscribing. Search for SAMatters Radio, SAMatters Radio. Please consider leaving some feedback, and if you like the show, a 5-star review. Not only does that motivate me, but it will also help others to find the show. Well, that's it. Episode 71 is complete. Thank you to Chief Farrar for the interview. Thank you to our sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all those who have hosted live events. And thank you, our listeners, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I do truly appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.